Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of the Road to the Master series, in which I will cover the analysis of the round number 7 from the Prague Open, in which I got paired against, as I've told you guys yesterday, another 2100 guy. On top of that with black pieces. On top of that I played next to him the previous round and I saw that he is dealing very well with the pressure from the opponent in my beloved isolated pawn structure, so I kind of liked my opponent in a sense, chess-wise, you know, that he was having the isolated pawn, dealing with it nicely, so I was like, okay, I admired what he did. And now I have to play him, right? On top of that, when I checked his games, I spotted that he is Catalan player. Knight f3, g3, solid stuff, draw is a good result, and so on. So after the frustration that I had the day before, that you remember, I talked about it like 7 times during the analysis, I have now just got frustrated by the preparation itself. Like just looking at the openings, I was like, oh well. So I really struggled what to play after this knight f3. If you also are following the channel closely, you may remember that basically in each of last 5 moves I chose different set of moves, move orders, setups, everything. In here there will be an instance of yet another change up in the, let's say, setup of mine, and funnily enough I got the inspiration from my opponent himself. So when since he's playing Catalan, I was trying to figure out, okay, what is his usual setup against knight f3, what does he like to do, and I found his setup quite nice. And I chose it. I chose c5 move in here, knowing that my opponent will most likely not go into the Sicilian defense. So I was expecting c4 move, because otherwise I would be willing to take over the space in the center. And usually in his games he did not allow that. But after c4, knight c6, instead of going for this g3 Catalan mostly setup, he is now choosing d4 move, which was okay with me because I wanted to take knight d4, knight f6. The vibe I am getting with the e6 move coming up is the one that I have in the Sicilians with 4 knights, which is my favorite variation there, right? So in here I felt, okay, the vibe is somewhat similar. And on top of that, after his knight c3, e6, I saw the game of his that he chose e4 in, and this is the transposition to the Sicilian of 4 knights with c4, of which inclusion is not good for white, for black is fine. I was so happy. After, I don't want to say hours, but after quite some time of looking for some ideas, I found the line, I found the position in which not only would not my opponent not get the fianchetto that he loves, but on top of that I would get the position that I love. Amazing stuff. However, since the game was quite a few years old, I'm not remembering sure, I will not lie to you, few years old, right? I expected that maybe at this moment my opponent will change his move order and idea for the game, because indeed e4 was not the most precise way of playing, and he chose g3, as you can expect from the Catalan player. But in here I chose a very direct line, very concrete one, in which I felt and hoped he would not be comfortable in, because he would not be familiar with, and that's exactly what I wanted and got. Because after queen b6 I hit the knight, knight has to jump away, most likely e3 is not that greatly looking with the holes on the light squares. He has the choice of jumping either here or there, and knight d to b5 happened, after which I play knight e5, trying to ask my opponent, what are you doing? You want to play both here and there with the bishop, what about this pawn, right? So I want to attack it very directly. After bishop g3, which is still obviously the opening phase, preparation phase, I chose a6, and already before bishop g2 my opponent fought. At this point he also fought. I was prepared until move 20, but I need to tell you one thing, because it took me such a long time to figure out that I am choosing this setup, then to get to know all the nuances after g3 on the 6th move, e4 on the 6th move, there was also some a3 move, other move, e3, that I looked at everything all together, it kind of mixed up in my mind. So once we got to this position, I knew that my opponent has two choices, and I remembered what to do after only one of them. After knight a4, I couldn't recall the variation, to be honest. I knew that obviously I have to go back with the queen, perhaps to d8 because any other square is unable for me to go to, but what to do then, I kind of struggled. So my opponent was trying to figure out what he has to do because he already at that point was playing game of chess. I was at that point playing the game of guessing, memory game. What did I have in my preparation on my phone, a few hours back? Thankfully, my opponent chose queen a4, in which I knew what to do. I knew that this move protects the knight indirectly by pinning my rook, therefore I have to go away with the rook. Knight a3, in here there were plenty of choices for black, but since I had little time to prepare each move until such a big depth of 15-20th move, I chose the most direct line, which was at the same time kind of an invitation to a draw if my opponent knows the line or if he will figure out the line, because I could have chosen, bishop e7, castle and so on. I chose bishop takes a3. If he takes with the pawn, yes, it opens up the file, yes, it gives him the opportunity to maybe use the bishop pair in the middle game, but it weakens some stuff too, so all in all, practically it's not the best. So he took with the queen, but once he takes with the queen, I take the pawn. Great. He now has to play queen b3, exchanging the queens. So even though I have the pawn, I am the one that needs to be precise in here, because since I gave up the bishop, unfortunately this one is amazing, and I need to really be precise. I went back to e5, which I still knew, and the variation I got on my phone during preparation was bishop f4, natural, very natural I would say, d6, obvious choice, long castle, obvious choice, king e7, and I kind of overestimated, not like my opponent, I don't want to now downplay his abilities, but my point is that I forgot to add a human touch to my preparation, because one and only move that is only equaling the game, not even making it better for white, is rook takes d6. And it was really hard, it would be always really hard for my opponent to acknowledge this fact during the game when surprised in the opening, because the point is that if I take the rook, the other one comes with a check, I go back, he takes, he put the pressure, I go away, he gives a check, I go back, he puts the pressure, so on. So I am relying on the only moves to actually survive. White is on the verge of really breaking through with all the problems of mine with not developed pieces, pressure onto the dark squares, onto the b7 weakness, and so on. For those reasons, at this point I would have to go rather for knight g6 instead of going into those variations, after which one more and only move for white to equal the game, rook d8, giving up the full rook under two of my pieces just to open up the diagonal for that one. And after rook d8, bishop b8, bishop d7 with the attack, bishop a7 going away, attacking here, rook c8 and inviting the bishop to take because of the pin, some move, going back with the bishop or something, let's say here, to allow that, or maybe not even allow because the pin is there, whatever, bishop c6. In here I would just simply offer a draw, go home, sleeping well, knowing that I put a lot of effort and hours into the opening phase, the preparation phase at home. I gave my best, I drew the game with black pieces within 20 moves without problems whatsoever. It is what it is, not always you can break the Catalan player, that's that. That was my prep, okay? But my opponent chose a human way of playing, human touch, that I, as I've said, missed in my preparation. It was not that easy to spot every implication after this, that, and so on. So he chose bishop e3, going mostly for some, long-term counterplay and compensation for the sacrificed pawn, due to the fact that he has this amazing bishop. I have a lack of the coordination and development, and it's indeed around equality. And I knew that I should not be worse, but I knew that perhaps I am not better. And on top of that, I need to deal with the problem of strategical kind. Alright then, how did the game continue? In here I had a choice of either going for d5 straight away, but going for it when the bishop then has the opportunity to maybe go there anyway, trying to trick me into playing d5. I was not sure about it. Also, I would forever and ever place the pawn on the right square, so the dark squares will never be the same. And d6 I was kind of afraid of because of some bishop b6 c7 ideas, so I was not sure. And since this knight is not protected and under some problems in many variations, I decided to just drop it back and later on decide what to do with the pawn. Once bishop went to the c5, my choice was easier. d6 is not possible, so d5 it is, trying to get some space and whatnot. Bishop d6 hitting my rook, I went away, he castled, and already as of now you may feel that okay, my position is getting maybe better and better in a sense, but the problem of mine is that still I am lacking the development. Therefore bishop d7 would be a normal choice to make. I was just not happy with the fact that after e4 and plenty of simplifications, I didn't believe that I can win this game apparently because of the bishop pair, because of my problems. What should I play here? Like rook c8. First of all, I was unsure whether this opposite colored bishop endgame will be winning. Perhaps not rightly so, because it should be, to be honest. Such an exchange would be simply premature, but if it does not happen, an opponent just simply continues, how can I continue? What, like knight d8 to protect the pawn and then try to regroup like this, or like, I don't know, that, like, yeah, just practically tough. And I found a great way of dealing with everything. I chose king d7, hitting the bishop, it has to go away, king c7, covering up the holes, knight d7 is on the menu, I am kicking it away, I then play b6, bishop b7, everything is developed, coordinated, dark squares are alright, perfect, 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 but there is knight b5 check in here. I cannot take the knight because my rook will be taken, easy. I cannot go here because there is checkmate in one, funnily enough. This just shows you how weak my dark squares are. So what? I'm going back, right? Yeah. So the variation, the idea that I thought is brilliant was indeed terrible mistake, tactical omission of a big caliber, let's say. So king d7 itself was not that bad, but after bishop c5, I am indeed struggling with finding a right move, I would say, but perhaps rook b8 should have been at least considered, so that I am preparing b6 in that kind of way, trying to then maybe maneuver my pieces like that and finish development. But you know, there would be constant pressure there, so it's not really that easy for me to deal with that. So funnily enough, I calculated knight b5 around here, I guess. I saw it. Then I was calculating king d7 indeed. So I don't know. I don't know what glitch had to appear in my mind to really go for this line, but here we are. Castle, king d7, bishop on the back. I went here thinking like I'm a genius. I was met with that. I went back. And thankfully, because usually in this type of scenario when opponent is having compensation initiative for the pawn and you are wasting 2 tempos, you are dead. Like initiative grows by those 2 tempos and that's that. In here, by some miracle, opponent does not have a clear way to use those tempos. Obviously, a usual obvious move would be to jump to d6, but both myself and apparently my opponent, I guess, too, couldn't figure out the way for white to then break through, because I can play b6 trying to undermine the bishop, the knight, so bishop has to drop back to a3, kind of, you know, making this pressure smaller one. So this is the only one that I can focus on and need to deal with. Knight d8 perhaps would be the choice, and it looks ugly, but nothing is there. And the computer says that white is on the verge of winning. I myself thought that I might be okay. My opponent fought in here for quite a long time, and I guess he evaluated the same. So we mis-evaluated strategically and tactically this type of scenario, because indeed white there has some pressure. So yeah, just a miracle, just a miracle. My opponent played e4, which in itself is also simply a bad choice overall, because it leads to simplifications that I love to see, to be honest, because I found b6 move. The idea of it is very, very simple. The pawn is poisoned because then I play rook b8, collecting either of the pieces. And if so, the bishop has to go away. And if so, I gained not only a control over the dark squares with a tempo, but also I got myself the b7 square that allows my bishop to get out, that allows my rook to be protected, that allows the knight to be hit really, and so on, so on, so on. So I was happy. So e4 was really unfortunate. If knight d6 would have happened, I would be in big trouble. If knight c3 would have happened, so basically the repetition of moves here and there, yeah, it's also not that great. e4 simplified quite a lot practically for me. I was really happy with that. So after b6, bishop e3, bishop b7 happened. e5, I now had a choice of taking there or there. I calculated my options, and I've decided that I don't want to take on d5 with the knight, because then I would allow my opponent to take here, ed5, knight c3, and it may look like not only I am pawn up, but also I am hitting with d4 the other two light pieces. But after rook d1 pinning my pawn, I am losing the pawn. The positions should be equal after, let's say here, takes, something like it. Yes, I have the bishop, which usually connects better with the rooks than the knight, and opponent have doubled pawns, but it should be simply too little to win, because the pawn structure is nearly the same. Those double pawns does not mean that much, and yeah, should be a draw. So I decided that I have bigger chances to win, because as you want, I wanted to win. As you know, because as you know, I wanted to win. I took here, he took me there, I took here, and he took on b6, allowing me to trade the bishops, planned this perfect knight here on d5, play f6, and even though I just told you 2 sentences ago that bishop coordinates better with the rooks than the knight usually, in here you will see the mastery of my knight. I turn into prime Hikaru in here, that is known for his online abilities of swindling the opponents in the time travel in the blitz games, because of the problems that knight can create in the endgame with low time. In here it's a classical game, so the time will be no factor, but the knight itself will also show its potential, so stay tuned. In here my opponent chose some move. There is no entry point to my king, to my pawn, to my nothing. So I have decided, okay, I will just launch my pawns at the opponent, because he was lower rated, sorry, not lower rated, but lower on time. Rating in here had nothing to do with my choices. So h5, g5, f5. And in here I realized that even though king e5 looks terribly bad, because after knight b4 I am threatening with the fork here. If the rook moves, I threatening with the rook with the fork here. I'm threatening with the rook there. White is okay if he decides to go even further. After I go back, he can go even further. So it's funny that all the last moves of white was here, there, entering my camp completely and saying, I am okay, because I cannot checkmate the king, and since the king is so active, I would perhaps have to just give the perpetual funny line. And I kind of knew it might happen, but I just said, okay, it's not gonna happen. I will just push f5, kick it away, give a check, because at d3, once more I will have the possibility of jumping there with a check, and some forks on c2 or whatever will be, let's say, in the air. So that's what happened indeed. King d3, rook c8. We are on the move number 30, so 10 more moves to go to the time control. My opponent in here replied with king d2, just going away from those checks, from those forks and whatnot. And I have decided that I do not want to resolve the situation along the C and A files. I would love to be taken, let's say, this way or the other. So I just said to myself, okay, let's just push further, h4, right? So I just wanted to win. I just wanted to push. I just wanted to play aggressively due to the time trouble of my opponent. I kind of forgot about the fact that once the position will open up, once there will be more weaknesses in the position, this dynamic of bishop being better coordinated than the knight with the rook will become even bigger, because plenty of weaknesses on both sides of the board usually indeed makes the bishop better, not the knight. But hey, let's just, push for it, right? So in here I did not realize it. I was just pushing. But once this, and that happened, I was like, oh well, rook took over the open file. My h pawn is weak. The h pawn promotion square for my opponent checks out. Even if I take one of the doubled pawns, if I will somehow get to them through the a file that my opponent gave me, which I will not even do, still I have no passer. So I was like, maybe I got myself into trouble. Thankfully though, using this pawn advantage in the center, I found that king d6 looks great with the ideas of maybe e5 in the near future. Rook g7 happened. e5 is not yet possible, because if I would do it, then the check would leave me without a pawn. But I have knight f4 activating it, allowing my king to enter even further. Bishop e3 happened, and I was okay, let's exchange, because even though I love my knighty and I told you guys that it will do plenty of good stuff, I was okay with the exchange because I knew that the king activity in this one will be very important, and all of a sudden this pawn that I have described as a weak one seconds ago will be mine to go to promotion, because either I will get the h pawn like this, or if my opponent will allow me to get to the g4 square by trying to attack the pawn, I will go to g4, a3, and then also try to get it. So yeah, the exchange does not work for the opponent. He played rook d8 to attack my pawn, and I found previously, obviously, and now I was just executing a check on d8 and then rook d5 move. All of a sudden my position is compact, protected, everything works well together. We are on the move 38. My opponent has little time, has to make two more moves. He plays rook h7, which seems natural, but now the concerto, the big concerto of my knight starts. I played knight g2 to both protect my pawn and attack the bishop. Exchange once more will favor me, therefore opponent does not want to exchange. He played bishop g5, not the greatest of moves because it leaves the f2 pawn undefended. Note that this is move number 40, so the last one before time control. And now the dance, the concerto continues. Knight e1 check. Opponent went to c1. Funnily enough, if he goes to b1, he gets nearly checkmated. I can check him here. Knight c2 with this idea. b4 is the only move that stops it, but now I can do whatever I want. I can take the pawn with the knight. I can try to go for this pawn. Yeah, perhaps those are the two most common and obvious choices. So that would be great. Therefore, he went back to c1. King c3 seemed unnatural because it's just showing that maybe opponent is willing to activate the king or whatnot. But I would give a check, play knight f3, hitting the bishop, inviting my opponent to take there, because then I would be using this quasi-active king to my own sake, let's say. So king c1 it is, but after he played there, I have the fork to the king and the pawn. That's why I told you guys that the bishop going there left this pawn hanging. King c2, I took, he took on h4, and this is it, guys. This is the position I really wanted, because I told you previously that this pawn would be somewhat endangering to me, but I told you guys that when the bishop was there, when the rook was better placed, when my pieces were not coordinated. Now the situation changed. I have everything centralized. I have two connected passes already ready and ready to go, right? So yeah, in here I knew I wanted to decide what to do now. And I've calculated quite a long line, even though it's not forced, it just felt so intuitive to me that, as I've said, I will repeat myself, I felt like Prime Hikaru, you know, just this knight here, there, and then here, everything worked out exactly like I wanted, because I decided that even though I can jump there, or there, or there, or like give a check or go back, I decided to play it simple. Knight e4, centralizing the knight, protecting it with the tempo to the bishop. Bishop will most likely drop back. I expected bishop e3 and it happened. I expected that to not allow my king to enter, let's say. Then I chose rook d8. This was my idea, to keep my rook mobile. Either maybe giving a check there, or maybe going like this, stopping also this rook from entering the 8th rank. So this was natural, and I felt like with the fact that the bishop is blocking the king, with the pawn being blocked by the rook, with the king having nothing to do, rook h7 will happen, as I've told you. Not forced, but for me natural. And I provoked this specific move with the rook d8, so that after knight f6 I am hitting the rook with the tempo. The rook goes away, where probably to attack my pawn. I don't care about it. I play knight d5 hitting the bishop, then my opponent will think, okay, my opponent is blundering, right? Rook b5 pinning the knight. But I wanted that because I wanted to exchange this pawn for that one. So I played rook h8, I've calculated. Please note it, I still saw it previously while playing knight e4. He protected the pawn, therefore I attacked the bishop. I knew he would went away, not allowing me to give a check and then take the pawn because of the skewer. I knew it. After bishop a7, I knew that I will be playing king e4. In here, I kind of didn't know what he's going to do, so I have to admit this was the position I had in my mind, on my mind. Rook b8 was not on it. I believe I mostly covered bishop b8 from the distance, but I felt like f4 should just finish the game on the spot. So he played rook b8, kind of alright. I gave a check, I took a pawn, and basically somewhere until this point I have calculated from that other one, right? So I was so impressed with myself, like all the calculation right after time control, because I had this additional time. Amazing stuff, creme de la creme. Now I just want to find one more creme de la creme continuation to finish the game off in style. So yeah, since my rook is active, king is active, obviously I had some king d3s on my mind, you know, giving up the pawn to checkmate, but the checkmate is not there because the rook can cover. So I thought, okay, maybe it's too much, let's think about something else, this and that. Maybe some knight e3 inclusion, but also not because the bishop is covering. So what can I tell you guys? Maybe I will just try to, you know, play it safe and slow, push pawn a little bit further. And I did just that. And I didn't even press the clock, and I knew, what have I done? My opponent smiled. I was laughing through tears. How can I throw a game like this in such a way? If you don't see it, pause the video, see how White can draw this game on the spot. I don't know, is it amazing stuff? Because that's what what I wanted to say now, or is it horrible stuff? But last game, if you remember, if you watched, it was frustration all along. All along. My opponent was simply having tremendous amount of luck, at least in my eyes, at least during the game, saving it, saving it, saving it. In here, it was no such feeling. I got my opponent outplayed in the opening. Then I've blundered these two tempos. Thankfully, it did not work out for him. Then in the end game, I defied all the odds, you know. My knight was better than the bishop with the rooks in the open position. I outplayed my opponent. I got myself into this moment just to blunder rook e5. I mean, come on. Yeah. King takes, bishop b8, draw. Obviously, no point in continuing the game, right? Straight after e5, as I've said, I was like pressing the clock, knowing what happened. I smiled, my opponent smiled. Someone was, you know, going by. He smiled or laughed, I don't remember. So basically, we were smiling and shaking our heads for like a minute or so. Played out those two moves, and yeah, we agreed to a draw. So, if after last game I told you guys that the key word for it is frustration. I cannot tell you what is it now. Like it's far beyond that, right? I drew 2 games in a row with a little bit lower rated opponent guys, but it felt like I should have gotten 2 out of 2. Okay, bare minimum 1.5. Let's not be that greedy, but terrible stuff. And in here, I really doubted myself, my chess ability, my physicality too, because it's not that often that I have played over my entire career, especially when I am adult, 2 big tournaments. Because as you can tell, as you know, from Krakow, I went nearly straight to the to Prague to compete. So nothing was working at this point of the tournament. I told to myself that I don't want to play chess, at least that evening, and yeah, I got let's say into argument with myself, with the side that wants me to compete. I was trying to tell this side that you know, I don't want to, since I can't, since I do such mistakes. So 2 tough evenings in a row can make some damage to your psyche when you are a chess player. I hope that not all of you have been there, but I guess those of you that have been there while competing know and can relate to what I'm saying. But hey, this was round number 7. 2 more to go. So yeah, we'll see if I have turned it around. As of now, as for this game, that's all. I wish you the best weekend to relax and rest from this terrible chess of mine. Hopefully, for the next week, I will prepare some better game and analysis for you to cheer both you and myself up. We'll see about it. As of now, even though the finish is as it is, thank you very much for watching. We'll see each other on Monday. Bye bye.